Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Zafaroni FIKRI ALFATTA, and as the government first speaker, I would like to state my speech about today's motion. In today's age, education becomes a worldwide thing, a worldwide accepted thing, and everyone throughout the world, every student around the world has received some kind of education, but at one point. And one of the phenomenon that I have observed in education is something that I would like to call the highly polarized. Demographic of student learning capabilities. What does that mean? That means that in schools, not all students are equal. One student is smart, the other is not so smart. The smart students are much more talented, much more uh, can easily progress their grade. Meanwhile, the not so smart students, they would have difficulties keeping up with the not so, with the smart students because they are struggling with their basic education. Now, this is what we believe. This is what I believe to be the background of this motion is that, and that in which this house would abolish primary and middle school years that group people based on age and instead group them by competency and intelligence. Before we move on, we would like to underline a few keywords and explain further about this motion. The keyword that we would like to explain is abolish. Abolish would mean to remove or to get rid of. In this context, the judge or the house would want to remove primary and middle school years that group people based on age and instead replace them with a system that group people based on competency and intelligence. In today's debate, our goal is to convince the judge and convince our debatees and convince everyone in today's debate that the House's decision to abolish primary and middle school years and replace it with a brand new system that based people based on competency and intelligence is the right choice in increasing the national standards of education and to benefit the students in the future. Now, let's get on to some of the arguments that we have prepared in order to boost our standing in this debate. In today's in our with our first argument, we would like to underline one of the key flaw in our our educational system currently, which is that our current educational system simply does not support the difference in learning ability. Like we said before, like we are all aware, there is something called the difference in demographic when it comes to learning capabilities in students. There and this is simply not taken into factor when it comes to designing uh, a school system for our country. You see, in our country, there are smart students and not so smart students. Smart students are really good, have very high learning capabilities, while the not so smart students may not have a really high learning capabilities. These two students simply cannot be on the same group. Why? Because if they are, then it will be on the detriment of both sides. The really smart students, they will get bored learning subjects that maybe they have already achieved mastery over, and they are ultimately going to be not very interested learning subjects that may be too easy for them and or maybe under them. And the not so smart students, they will have difficulties learning their basic subjects because they have a low learning capabilities and they will be left behind. This is why we believe that the decision to students based on competency and intelligence is the ultimately better choice, because then the smart students can study subjects that are advanced enough for their knowledge, and the not so smart students can study with a slower pace with a lower, less advanced knowledge. Our second argument ties into another key flaw that we have seen in today's and in our country's educational system, is that everyone can pass to the next grade so long as they wait for the next academic year to roll around. Now, we understand that there are certain boundaries that the students need to pass, like grades, for example, but grades ultimately barely determines one's intelligence and one's competency in a subject. Now, for example, now this becomes a problem when, let's say, not a very smart student graduates to the next level of education without the baseline competency and intelligence required to study in that new higher level educational standards. And so what happens is the not so smart students who barely uh, graduates this year will struggle more and more the next year. And this becomes a problem because if the not so smart students is struggling in this year, then just imagine how they would feel studying in the next year when the subject they're learning is far more advanced and far more difficult. The last argument that we have prepared is this system of classifying students based on competency and intelligence is ultimately going to create a healthy improvement focused atmosphere. What does that mean? Well, the not so smart students who are at low grades, they will have to keep pushing themselves to be better and better, because then that's their only way of becoming of being accepted to a higher grade. Meanwhile, the not so smart students, they can study really fast, and so why? Because they can complete their education super fast, and they can graduate really quickly. And this would in turn create a very good and healthy improvement focus atmosphere, because that is truly the goal of education, that is self improvement. Based on those three facts or three arguments, we declare that this motion is beneficial to support for the benefit of the students, but also to increase the national educational standards of this country. Thank you very much.